Hey, what is up guys? This is Nishi from MST.TV here, back with another Market Watch episode. So today we're covering some more cards that we've seen trending on the market recently. We're about 1 week away from YCS Pittsburgh, but somehow that isn't even really what's taking over things on the secondary market. Even though we just had that ban list drop, I think everyone has a pretty solid idea already of what decks are going to do well, and a lot of people have settled on their lists. But beyond that, we have to keep an eye on cards coming in Burst Protocol, which is looking like a really solid set that should shake up the format early next year. And then we also now always have to keep up with Genesis format, since they should be getting updates to their list every month or so, and so we'll want to stay on top of what cards are trending over there. Let's get started. Kicking things off, we have Harmonic Synchro Fusion. So this is one that I made a note on my phone about. I was gonna talk about it on Wednesday. Somehow it completely did slip my mind. Anyways, this is a pretty odd normal spell that seems kind of powerful. Basically, you send a tuner and non-tuner from your side of the field to the graveyard, and then you basically bring out a synchro and a fusion monster, each of which could have been made using those two materials, but then you can only fusion or synchro summon from the extra deck for the rest of the turn. Now, this is a really weird card. I know that when it came out, it did see a bit of hype. It's just really difficult to figure out exactly what deck it is that would be able to make use of it, and I think that in general, even if you could do something with it, right? Harmonic Synchro Fusion just feels like such a brick to draw if you draw it at the wrong time, so the potential benefit of bringing out an extra like Garura or a Mud Dragon just isn't really worth it. However, we did have a new card revealed in Burst Protocol called Fallen of the White Dragon. It's a Fallen of Albaz retrain where you can special summon it from hand by sending a monster that mentions Fallen of Albaz from your extra deck to the graveyard, and then on summon it summons an Ecclesia from your hand deck or graveyard as well. So with this, people are looking at using White Dragon to bring out the Incredible Ecclesia, which is the one that you used to play in Sword Soul, and then you can bring out a level 8 Synchro as well as one of the Fallen of Albaz fusion monsters, which is kind of cool. Now, unfortunately, I just don't really know how much play this card would actually see. Like, the same issues with the card just being such a brick and not worth a spot in the main deck are still there. They're still the same issues. Now, despite this, it seems that people have bought up the card based on theory alone. It has just one printing from last year's Maze set, Maze of Millennia, so it's only available as an Ultra and Collector's Rare. Now recently, this card was only about $3 for the Ultra. It did jump to a high of about $15, $16, but they've since settled down at around $12 a copy. And then with the collector's rares, those were $12 or so before. They jumped up to a high of around $35 to $40 before now settling back down at about $30 each. Now with this one, I do feel like it's inevitable that it will be reprinted soon. Remember, this card came out at the same time as 7th Tachyon, so we'll probably see the two reprinted at a very similar time in a similar set. In terms of meta relevance, I'm saying medium on the screen here because I don't know for sure that it won't see play, but realistically, when I think things through, I don't think that this is going to see any sort of competitive usage because it's just so situational. So overall, between the card being likely to be reprinted and unlikely to see play moving forward, I feel like this is a card you guys should definitely be looking to sell. Up next, let's talk a little bit about Garden Rose Maiden. So this is a card that has actually been trending for the last little while, ever since the release of Doom of Dimensions. Doom gave us some really cool cards revolving around Black Garden, including a couple of new synchros that look really strong, and the cards have proven to be quite good. I believe they've seen success at the regional level in Modern format, and they're pretty highly regarded in Genesis format as well. Now this card is a useful combo piece because when you're climbing with the Rose cards, this card lets you search for a Black Garden on summon, and you can also banish it from your graveyard to bring a Rose Dragon out of your graveyard as well. Now for a while, this card was actually pretty highly sought after. A lot of players wanted to play the Rose cards when they came out, so we saw all versions of the card getting pretty expensive. In fact, the original Ultra Rares from the Legendary Duelist set climbed from $15 or so all the way up to $30, and the weird thing is they're still maintaining that price right now. Now, maybe it's just that the market is a little bit slow to move. We have actually received confirmation that Garden Rose Maiden is getting a reprint in the Legendary 5Ds decks as a common, and that'll be coming out closer to the end of November. So I feel like because of that, we should be expecting to see prices of the card tank across the board. That's what we are seeing with the Legendary Duelist Season 2 Secret Rare print, which has gone from $30 all the way down to the $10 mark now. We do also have a Starlight Rare printing from Doom of Dimensions that has the alternate art background. They're down a little bit, but as the max rarity version, we don't expect too much of an influence from a reprint. But yeah, it's definitely weird to see that the Ultras are maintaining this crazy price tag when they have a reprint confirmed, and they're also probably not going to be all that meta relevant either. I do understand being sentimental and wanting to hold on to that original printing, but I think that realistically a lot of players are happy to move off of this card and just pick up a cheaper version, especially when the price difference is going to be that big. If you happen to be having any of these Ultras just sitting around in your trade binder, or maybe even in your bulk if you haven't dug them out, definitely look to move them if you can move them for a slightly higher price before the price comes crashing down within the next couple of weeks. Alright, next up we have No Punk Rising Scale. So this is a pretty crazy card for the Punk deck. This card can be summoned by banishing a Punk from your hand or graveyard, and then on summon you can pay life points to either search for a Punk or special summon a Punk from your deck or graveyard as long as it isn't a level 8. So this card feels like a crazy broken card for the Punk strategy. I feel like if a lot of other decks got support this good, they'd be pretty broken, but Punks are one of the less powerful themes in the game overall. They don't have as crazy of an end board. However, Punks are actually a really powerful deck over in Genesis format, which is why the Punk cards are trending all of a sudden. Emergency Teleport also just got reduced from 40 points to 35 points. Maybe that's enough of a boost to where you could actually maybe play 2 copies of E-Tele in the deck. The card just actually came out earlier this year, and its price has been pretty wild. This card was one of the harder ones to pull, so we actually saw Rising Scale at around $15 or so when the set first came out. However, I guess people realized the deck wasn't as great in modern format as they were hoping, so the card quickly fell back down to around the $5 to $7 range. However, with Genesis format now being a thing, the card has gotten a ton of hype. The card has made its way back up to around $10, and then with the hype of Genesis format, the card has steadily climbed over the last month or so, and now sits at just under $20 per copy. Pretty crazy price jump there, and as a brand new card, I don't really think we'll be seeing a reprint of Rising Scale anytime soon. The other card that you guys should also keep an eye on is actually Jam Fever, the new Ixies from the same set. Those have gone from being $2 before to now being $7 or so as well. The interesting thing with Rising Scale is that I'd actually keep an eye on the Starlight Rare copies rather than the Ultras. The Ultras are currently just under 20, but the Starlights are actually down in price, moving from 50 down to about 45. If you can grab the Starlights for around $40, then you're getting the highest rarity printing that isn't going to devalue as much if the card ever does get reprinted for only double what an Ultra costs. The ratios just seem a little bit off to me price-wise. That said, I wouldn't go out and say that you should just blindly pick up Starlight Rising Scales, right? But if you are interested in playing the Punk deck in Genesis format, it actually might be worth considering grabbing the Starlights over the Ultras so that you have that chance at a little bit of extra value. Okay, so we have a couple of weird ones next. The first one here is Armalier the Star Leader Dragon. Now this is honestly what seems like a pretty forgettable old Link monster. It's a Link 2 dragon that requires 2 effect monsters to make. It can't be used as Link material, and its effect is that you special summon a monster from your hand in defense position with its effect negated that is the same level as a monster that this card is currently already pointing to. So essentially, this card just sets up an Xyz play for decks that have trouble getting multiple monsters onto the field. Now with this one, I've asked Tom, I've asked some other people, none of us actually have any idea why exactly it is that this card is currently trending or what deck it is that's potentially going to use this card. The first obvious thought was Dragon Link since this is a dragon, but your levels are really varied in that deck and this card can't be used as a Link material, so that doesn't really make sense. Other than that, the only meta deck that we can really think of right now is maybe something like K9, but they already have a pretty easy time getting multiple monsters onto the field. So yeah, it must be a deck that isn't just on our radar right now. Maybe a deck neither of us is too familiar with, something like Dooms or Elven Notes. If you guys do know, let us know down in the comment section. But anyways, this card is such an obscure one. It only has one printing back as an ultra rare from Dual Overload, so coming out back in 2020. For most of this card's life, it's literally been a 25-cent card. I don't believe it's ever seen any sort of competitive usage ever. But all of a sudden this card has shot up in price within the last few days. This card hit a high of about $12 very temporarily. It quickly settled back down as people relisted them to around the $5 mark. Now with Armalier, I don't have too much to say about it since I don't know exactly why it is that it's trending. However, the card does seem extremely restrictive for what it's trying to do, so I have a really hard time believing it's actually going to be that meta relevant. And even if it does become super relevant, it has been out of rotation for so long that Konami would probably reprint it anyways, so you're probably better off dumping this card while it's seeing a ton of hype. Next up, this is another super obscure card. It's Landrobe the Rock Vassal. So the Vassals are a subgroup of the Monarch theme. These monsters all have 800 attack and 1000 defense, and generally you're summoning them out so that you can tribute them for your Monarch tribute summons. Now historically, I believe the only ones we've really seen actually used are Idea, Eidos, and Mithra. However, there was a Monarch deck that got first place at a regionals over in Rochester a couple of weekends ago, and they were actually running 3 copies of Landrobe in the side deck. Now this card seems like a really interesting tech. You can special summon this card from your hand by booking an opponent's monster face down, so this card would have just been sided in going second, but it is pretty strong. It also lets you add a monster with vassal stats from your graveyard back to your hand if it's tributed. So Monarchs did get new support back in Duelist Advance. It's not bad support, but it wasn't exactly amazing. However, Domain of the True Monarchs is still a pretty good card against most decks in the format, and Monarchs don't really care about cards like Dimensional Barrier or Artifact Mjolnir. All of that said, Landrobe is apparently something that players were looking to pick up in order to complete their Monarch decks. This card only has 1 printing, which came out back in the old Monarch structure deck that introduced Ether and Erebus into the game, so back in 2016. The thing is, most people just threw a lot of those other vassals into their bulk, so this is quite a difficult card to find, and as a result the card has gone from being 50 cents before to now being a solid $4 card. With Landrobe, I feel like this is the sort of card that would be reprinted in an OTS tournament pack as a common or a super, and then we all kind of look at it and we wonder why the heck Konami chose to reprint it now of all times. But if we look at things realistically, like, no shade to Monarchs or to the guy who won the regionals, I have to imagine that luck played a pretty big factor there, and we probably won't be seeing Monarchs topping or winning too many more events anytime soon. That said, this is yet another card you guys should definitely be looking to offload if you happen to be sitting on a few extra copies. And finally, the last card we're taking a look at for today is the Gorgon of Zilophonia. So this is an interesting tech option that we've started to see popping up in certain extra decks. Gorgon is a pretty odd Link 3 monster with all of its arrows pointing upwards. However, this card has 2 effects that are very relevant in the current format. One is that it negates the effects of all monsters it points to and stops them from attacking, but then it also gains the attack of all monsters it points to as well. So this card is being used by certain decks as another card that you can make with IP Masquerena. You link summon this card on your opponent's turn, and if you time it correctly, you can negate the effects of monsters that your opponents summon if they summon into this zone. The other really cool thing is that this card is actually an out to Liger Dancer. If you make this with IP, it can't be destroyed by Liger Dancer's effect, but Gorgon gaining attack points doesn't actually affect the Liger Dancer, so this card can destroy Liger Dancer in battle. Now, this isn't something that's seeing a crazy amount of play, but I have seen it in quite a few extra decks recently, and I think it's a tech that's really worth exploring more. Now, in terms of price, this card is a pretty new secret rare from Duelist Advance, and it's remained pretty steady at around the $5 mark for basically its entire existence. Don't mind the TCG player graph here, I don't know why it's dipping down to 0 like that. Then with the Starlight Rare, they are down a little bit, but I think that's become pretty normal with a lot of the Starlight Rares, as they don't see too much meta play, or they don't see as much play as maybe people were expecting early on. Anyways, as a brand new card, this card shouldn't be reprinted for quite a while, but I do think that the card has the potential to see a ton of play moving forward. That said, at only $5 per copy for the secret rare, I think this is a definite buy. I could see this card easily hitting the $15 to $20 mark if it sees more play, as has been the trend with a lot of generic extra deck monsters that come as secret rares in core sets. If you're able to pick these up for maybe $4 cash or $5 in trade, I think this is a really solid, low risk pickup that has a lot of upward potential. Alright guys, that is all I have for today's episode. Definitely excited for YCS Pittsburgh, which is going to be happening just next weekend. I didn't realize that it was happening so quickly. It feels like YCS Anaheim was just last week or something, but I'm excited to see a bunch of you guys there. It'll be my first time in Pittsburgh, Let me know if there's stuff that you guys think I should be doing close to the venue. Anyways, if you did enjoy today's Market Watch episode, please make sure you let me know by hitting that thumbs up button. Make sure you leave a comment in the comment section. Hit subscribe if you haven't already. And until next time, guys, don't forget to hold on to your MST.TV.